Hi all, welcome back to a new topic today. And today let's discuss something very interesting, and that's about a balloon. Yes, a balloon that has actually shaken the relationship between the world's two largest powers, that's US and China. So let's talk about the spy balloon, which US calls so, but it is called as a weather balloon by Chinese. Now the US has shot down this balloon, and just before the US Secretary of the State Blinken's visit to China to actually make things very smoothen between the US and Chinese. They have been having a very rough road in their international relationship between the two countries, starting from the trade war, the South China Sea, and many more things. So let's get into the details of this balloon actually, and how now the trajectory of the US-China relations will be, and let's see some really important irritants between the two countries that have made them the worst enemies actually, I would say, in the 21st century. So the US used its powerhouse, that's the F-22 aircraft, which is a Raptor, to shoot down the alleged spy balloon which was spied, and it was there within the US airspace itself, and it was sighted on Montana, and so they shot down the spy balloon. And the US has, let me tell you also, this F-22 Raptor is actually seen as the crown of the US Air Force, and US has some 195 Raptors which are produced by Lockheed Martin. So it has used this Raptor to shoot down this spy balloon, which US calls so. Now China claimed that this object was nothing but a weather balloon, and it denied the charges of spying. The US Secretary of the State immediately postponed his visit to Chinese in response to the flying of the suspected so-called Chinese spy balloon over United States. Now, the presence of the surveillance balloon over the US airspace, US said, is a total clear violation of the US airspace and also violation of the US sovereignty and international law, and called it an irresponsible act. While Chinese said that it was overreaction, and explained that it was just a weather balloon, and the decision to take action on this balloon was actually criticized by China without actually giving them a point for explanation. While the Chinese foreign minister claimed that the balloon spotted over the US was a civilian airship, and it was mainly used for weather research and actually not for spying. Now the US, however, acknowledged what China said, and also acknowledged what they said, that it is actually a weather balloon, but said that the presence of the balloon in the US airspace is nothing but a clear violation of the sovereignty and also the international law, and it was unacceptable. China termed the situation as a very big overreaction from the US side, and said that it can do the same thing in such situations, and said that it can use the same necessary action of dealing with things in similar situations. So this is what Chinese actually said. So if you see that that the US Secretary of State Blinken's visit to China was actually being seen actually a step in improvement of relations. So the ground level for this, or the base, was laid by Xi and Biden during the Bali G20 summit in November, and both of them met together. They had a talk, and it was seen actually a breakthrough in smoothing of ties after a very rough patch with the trade war and COVID in the aftermath. Now Blinken's trip would actually culminate in more robust talks between the two countries after the Bali meeting of G20 in Indonesia, and this would actually lead up to further meeting between Biden and Xi to actually smoothen the relations further. So let us actually go into what are the major irritants. Now we know what has happened with the spy balloon. We also know that Blinken has actually cancelled the trip to China, and there has been words from either side coming up. So the spy balloon saga now is the latest flashpoint between the two countries, the world's most two powerful countries actually. And US and China have been actually having a rough road and complex bilateral relation for some very long time, actually prior even to the COVID, starting from Trump's term itself. So from trade to Taiwan, the countries have experienced periods of tension and cooperation as well. Let us know, I would not go into the timeline since the World War II. These two countries actually cooperated with each other during the World War II, but I would like to highlight some of the important irritants between the US and China in the 21st century, so that will lay a background for you to understand the upcoming events. Now, let me tell you that China's or US has always been hard-worded regarding China's action in the South China Sea. It has warned China not to build up its military presence in the South China Sea, where China actually lays claims to a set of artificial islands, and has built artificial islands and many bases as well. So US warned China to cease any further militarization of these islands, and a chain of artificial islands and reefs were also built by in the South China Sea by China to lay claim of the area. The region is disputed between China, Taiwan, Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei and Philippines, and all of them have similar territorial claims. In 2018, now after Trump came in, he imposed a slew of tariffs on China, and this was in response to the theft of the US intellectual property. And Trump also announced some trade tariffs on Chinese imports, making the imports very, very costly. Specifically, he targeted steel, aluminium, clothing and electronics, and also banned many electronic companies working there. China also imposed retaliatory measures on a slew of goods on US imports, making US imports further costly. So it was a trade war, and let me tell you that this trade war actually continued for almost 1 year and more than that. So from beginning of 2018, it continued up to 2020. Now, China's Houston consulate was shut down, and then the US ordered the Chinese consulate to be shut down, alleging that it was actually in the center of spying and intellectual property theft. On the other hand, China retaliated by closing the US consulate in Chengdu. Then recently, in the aftermath of that, the House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan amid threats by China over the decision, which actually made China to further criticize US's action, because Taiwan is a part of One China policy of China, and China sees Taiwan as its own land, and US has violated this. So Xi Jinping warned President Joe Biden and that not to play with fire and provoking China, and after that there has been continuous militarization and gathering of military ships actually in the Taiwan Strait. So there was a tense situation after the visit of Nancy Pelosi to Taiwan, almost entering into violating of Taiwan's air defense zone as well. China has been very, very vocal about the Quad and has called it as a group that is only planning to counter Chinese rise and nothing more than that. But the US has said that it's an economic grouping, and actually a grouping that focuses on Indo-Pacific policy and not to counter or not targeting any one country alone. China is also against the bilateral exercises that India has with the US, and recently also during the bilateral exercise, China has warned the US of not interfering in the bilateral relation between India and China. China, on the other hand, US on the other hand, has used the theory of freedom of navigation in the international waters to travel international waters around the China, Taiwan and many other areas of which China lays claim. This has further led to tension between the two countries, and China feels it's an intimidation. So this is what's happening frequently actually. The US-China's relations have further soured after the COVID fallout from Wuhan, and this led to actually putting a stop to the global economy once again. The other areas of conflict include the One China policy regarding Taiwan and also its actions in Hong Kong. US has been very critical and vocal of these as well. US openly criticizes China's support to North Korea. North Korea is seen as a top enemy of the US, and this country keeps on testing missiles that can target USA. The trade imbalance between the two countries is a sticking point between them as well. China's support to Pakistan, which US sees as a ground for terrorism, and also Chinese veto at the UNSC, that is the Security Council, against the terrorists from Pakistan is another sticking point, not only between US and China but between other countries as well. And apart from that, it's the China's Belt and Road Initiative, and now recently the depth relation that China has been building up with small countries like Maldives, Sri Lanka, etc., to gather them and to make them a part of the string of pearls to counter India, and also to put its stronghold in the Indian Ocean. And apart from that, developing of many bases as well. The recent other criticism has been regarding the Chinese submarine, the spy submarines that have been seen in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands nearby, and also the recent, again, the veto regarding the human rights violation in Pakistan as well. So all of these have been some of the few very recent and burning sticking points between US and China that keep coming up again and again. But then it was thought that they would be having a fruitful discussion after the cordial meeting in the Bali summit of G20 in Indonesia, and the ground was going to be put by Blinken's visit, but everything went haywire because of the balloon saga, the spy balloon saga, and we know that Blinken has now called off the visit. So we do not know when again Xi and Biden would actually be meeting, or whether Blinken would again postpone and reschedule his visit. So only time would speak about the reset in the ties between US and China. Otherwise, for now, it's cancellation of the visit, and we do not know what next. So we should just wait and watch for the next coming days as what would actually transpire between US and China. I hope this information was helpful to you all to lay the foundation to understand the coming events in the further days. And if you did like, please like, share and subscribe, and do comment and follow me for your daily updates. And until then, as usual, it's happy learning.